Morning, everybody. New day. Mercies are new every morning. That song goes, bless the Lord, oh my soul. Bless his holy name. How does it go? And then it says, may I be singing when the evening comes. So we just thank God. There's going to be a lot happens from now till the evening. And maybe be singing when the evening comes. I'm going to talk about some of the things that the Pharisees were badgering Jesus with all the time. And one of them was fasting. The second one was, keeping the washing of hands, the washing of cups, the washing of tables, all that ceremonial cleansing. And the third one was, ceremonials, cleansing, fasting, and the Sabbath, keeping the Sabbath. 6 times they come against them about the Sabbath. That's recorded there. So, like in these ones, there's kind of different, like they were things he then. So the first one, ceremonial cleansing, washing of hands. Now this isn't hygiene, washing your hands for hygiene. This is just ceremonial. In case you were outside and you touched anything that was ceremonially unclean. I remember reading a book by Lakshmi, I can't remember her second name, but she was a Maharashtrian from a Hindu background. Anyway, in it, one of them was a Brahmin or one of these. Anyway, he touched a person from whom he thought was from an unclean group, and he just freaked out. He ended up that he washed everything in the house. He washed his hands. Every time any of the family came in, they had to wash their hands, wash their feet. Anything that came into the house had to be washed and rewashed and rewashed. And this went on for years. He went fanatical about it. The family were going, gosh, it's driving us mad. It's like COVID. This is wash everything. And then after a while, it was like, okay, yeah, I know what you mean. But this ceremonial cleansing, that it was really not necessary, and they made it into such a, it was all outward and nothing inward, and that was the problem with it. They were outwardly cleansed ceremonially, but inwardly, they were bad attitudes, judgmental, critical, and all these kind of things. Fasting was the second one, because Jesus' disciples were not fasting, and they looked at the Pharisees, they fasted, and they looked at John the Baptist's disciples, and they fasted. And they were saying, why do your disciples not fast? And his answer was, he answered them in a way that, firstly, fasting is a voluntary thing. It's never to be imposed upon anyone, on yourself or anybody else. It's a voluntary thing. And the other thing, how he answers, and at one case, actually, John the Baptist's disciples ask him, and he had great respect for John the Baptist and his disciples. And he says, basically, it's kind of appropriate for John's disciples to fast. And then he gives them an answer that John himself gave. He says, I am not the groom. He says, when the bridegroom comes, the friend of the bride rejoices. And he's saying that Jesus is the bridegroom. I am the friend of the bridegroom, and the bride, which is the church, belongs to Jesus. So Jesus used that same illustration back to him, and he says, you don't fast at a wedding. Like, now I am the bridegroom has come, and the bride has found her groom, and you don't fast at a wedding, and neither do the friends. It's inappropriate. It's incongruous. It goes against the nature. Inside there's joy and rejoicing. You can't be outwardly austere and sad and fasting. And so there has to be a match, the inner match. And, so he does say later, when he will be taken away and there will be a lot of trials and hardships on the disciples, they will fast then. So there's an appropriateness to it. Otherwise, it's not done. And then, so it should be natural, and it should be appropriate, like that way. And also, just maybe lastly, the fasting, he's saying, it's usually when there is a particular need, a strong need for something, such as when the church was praying in Antioch, and then they, by the Holy Spirit, set apart Paul and Barnabas. So there is a kind of real desire to know God's will, or like in the book of Esther, the great threat that was there. And then the last one we're saying was the Sabbath. And the Sabbath, they really attacked him so much, didn't want him healing on the Sabbath. And in the Sabbath, he just said, not that you have to do away with it, but that you have to have it in the right spirit. And actually, of the 10 Commandments in the Old Testament, 9 of them are repeated in the New Testament except the Sabbath. And that's really to show us that this is a voluntary thing, and it's only the spirit of it that we are to take. But not in Jesus' day. They really came down on him thick and heavy, and when he would heal people, and he would say, and he answered them a few ways. He said, to kind of get them to think, he's saying, well, if your ox falls into a pit, or your sheep, aren't you going to take him out of it? Like, isn't it only natural that you'll do it? And then he gives an example too of some who had to work on the Sabbath, such as the priest. He brought the shewbread into the temple, such as circumcision. You were to be circumcised the 8th day. If that happened to fall on a Sabbath, then you were circumcised on the Sabbath day. So he was saying, here's some of these religious services that you kind of totally approve of. And then the other one was that God the Father is working all the time. The sun rises, the sun sets, the rain falls on the Sabbath. And God works all the time on it, and we do it. We, are to take the spirit of it. And just maybe last thing, we'll end with this. And the Sabbath actually is for man, and not man for the Sabbath. It's to serve us. We are not to serve it. And although we are not at all obliged to it at all in the New Testament, however, it's there as a gift for us, and the principles are there. And really, because we are living in a time of overstrain, especially city life, and especially kind of the non-stop, there's no off switch with the kind of phone and whatever you have. I know there's an off switch in the home, but meaning we're 24 hours on a line. But they say you need margin in your life. You need some buffer in your life. You need some spaciousness in your life. There has to be a buffer. If we are pushed to the full extent, then there's nothing there reserved left for an emergency, and emergencies happen. And there's also nothing there, as Oswald Chambers used to say, the nerves are so stretched to the limit. There's nowhere for the blessing of God to rest upon. And God gives the Sabbath to give us some room for the body to rest, and actually the body to physically rest. And after the body's physically rested, then it can refresh itself with whatever it is that refreshes you, sports, running, walking, activities, fun things, whatever it is. And then, of course, to enjoy God and what He's given us. Okay, well, let's be singing when the evening comes, even if the plane keeps on interrupting at the wrong times. Okay, there you go. I hope they have a lovely flight.